Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1137 for November 30th, 2025. Coming up in a few minutes.
It's called Not Another Effing Whiskey Book, and I suppose it was funny because it was like a working title, and I showed it to a few people, and they're like, "That's brilliant. You should just put it like that."
Mitch Bechard's cheeky, irreverent memoir of life on the road as a whiskey brand ambassador is Not Another Effing Whiskey Book. Mitch spent about 10 years on the road for Diageo and Glenfiddich before opening his own tourism business in Speyside. He's also the co-host of Not Another Whiskey podcast, and he'll join us this week on WhiskyCast In-Depth. I'll taste the latest from Glen Grant, Willett, and Wild Turkey in the What I'm Tasting This Week department, and we'll celebrate a milestone on Behind the Label. The news is next on this week's episode of WhiskyCast, whiskey's oldest and most awarded podcast series.
Gifting season's right around the corner. Luckily, you don't have to overthink this one. Dewar's 12-year-old, finished in first fill, unrinsed bourbon casks. It's the kind of gift that makes you look good while making them feel special. Stick around, I'll explain.
Crafted with time, shaped by nature, perfected by generations. From Yamazaki to Hibiki to Hakushu, every drop of House of Suntory whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from. House of Suntory. This is Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
Let's get started with the week's news. It's brought to you by the Dalmore. We'll start with the latest in the Uncle Nearest receivership saga. Founder Fawn Weaver and her husband Keith have filed a motion seeking an emergency hearing before the federal judge overseeing their case. They claim the court-appointed receiver in charge of Uncle Nearest's affairs is trying to sell the business out from under them. The receiver has hired an investment bank to look at two options: refinancing Uncle Nearest's $108 million in bank loans or selling the company's assets to a third party. The Weavers claim selling now when the whiskey market is slumping will result in the assets being sold for substantially less than the company is worth, and while the bank will get paid, Uncle Nearest investors will see a smaller return. Fawn Weaver is the largest single shareholder in Uncle Nearest and the Nearest Green Distillery. The judge has set a Tuesday deadline for responses from the receiver and the bank. Oregon's Rogue Ales and Spirits has closed its doors and filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy liquidation. Rogue was primarily known as a craft brewer, but also made whiskeys. The company owed significant back taxes and rent to the port of Newport. Virginia's Catoctin Creek Distilling is looking for investors, not because the distillery owned by Becky and Scott Harris is in financial trouble, but to fund an expansion and new product development. The Harrises have already raised close to $1 million toward a goal of $5 million, according to the spirits business. The private placement memorandum has a minimum investment of $25,000, and investors will receive a share of the proceeds when the Harrises eventually sell Catoctin Creek to new owners in the future. Scotch whisky industry leaders are blasting the UK government's autumn budget, which will raise excise duty on distilled spirits once again in line with inflation. The tax hike will come in February and will be calculated based on the increase in the retail price index at the time. In a statement, the Scotch Whisky Association ripped the move, saying it, quote, puts additional pressure on a sector suffering job losses, stalled investment, and business closures. Chancellor Rachel Reeves announced a cut in duty for draft beer and cider in pubs to help the hospitality industry. In other news, the oldest Scotch whiskey ever bottled went on the auction block at Christie's in New York. Decanter number 1 of Artistry in Oak, the Gordon and MacPhail 85-year-old Glenlivet, brought a hammer price of $160,000. With fees, the total was more than $200,000. All proceeds from the auction, minus costs, are being donated to American Forests, which works to support efforts to create healthy, resilient forests. Bruichladdich is taking its annual Black Art single malt release to the global travel retail market as an exclusive bottling. Black Art Sapporo will be sold first at Singapore's Changi Airport, with additional travel retail markets coming in December. The 19-year-old Sapporo will be followed by Black Art Profeta next November and Impress in November 2027. There's no word on pricing. Also from Bruichladdich, one of the earliest controversies we covered on WhiskyCast back in 2006 was Jim McEwen's quadruple distillation of a whiskey that was so high in strength that the Scotch Whisky Association deemed it irresponsible. At 85% ABV, it was so strong they actually used the new make spirit to fuel a race car. It was sold several years later as Bruichladdich X4, and now there's an 18-year-old version of X4 available. It's bottled at 63.5% ABV and is available through the Bruichladdich website for £225 a bottle. Last week, we heard from New Brunswick Liquor Corporation CEO Lori Stickles about her province's decision to quietly sell off its back inventory of American wines and spirits. Of course, New Brunswick and most other Canadian provinces have been officially boycotting American whiskeys and other spirits since the trade war between the two countries started in early March. Now comes word that neighboring Nova Scotia will sell off approximately $14 million worth of U.S. spirits and wine that have been collecting dust in its warehouses. The spirits will go on sale Monday at Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation stores. The proceeds will go to community food banks and hunger-related charities. Like New Brunswick, Nova Scotia is not planning to buy any more American spirits until the trade war ends. Just a handful of new whiskies to mention this week. British Columbia's Macaroni Distillers is releasing 2 new peated whiskies made with locally harvested peat. The Peat Project Harvest Coast and Cathedral Grove releases will sell for $85 Canadian each. The Glasgow Distillery Company has released a bottling in partnership with the Whiskey Shop in Glasgow's Buchanan Galleries. It's a 9-year-old heavily peated single malt bottled at cask strength, 54% ABV. Only 180 bottles are available through the Whiskey Shop stores in Glasgow. The Scottish independent bottler Lady of the Glen has released a Christmas bottling of a 2016 Mannockmore single malt finished in an ex-Pedro Jimenez Octave cask. It's bottled at cask strength 55.9% ABV and is available through the Lady of the Glen website for £60 a bottle. England's Cotswolds Distillery has joined forces with King Charles's Highgrove Estate to launch Highgrove Evergreen Single Malt English Whiskey. The barley for the whiskey came from the Highgrove Estate, and the box features a watercolor painting by King Charles of the estate. It's priced at £100 a bottle. Highgrove's share of the profits will be used to support the King's Foundation's charity work. Texas's Milam and Green Distillery has released Volume 4 of Unabridged, its semi-annual cask-strength blend of Kentucky, Tennessee, and Texas bourbons. Just 8 barrels were used for Volume 4, which is available at select retailers for $95 a bottle. California's Redwood Empire Distillery has released its annual bottled and bond bourbon. The whiskey was distilled during the spring season of 2020, and 120 barrels were used to make this year's edition. There's also a bottled and bond rye from the same season. Both are available through the Redwood Empire website. No word on pricing. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. The news is brought to you by the Dalmore.
Hello, Richard Patterson here, Master Distiller, Master Blender for the Dalmore. You know, whenever the team and I are in the world sharing our exceptional single malt, we like to keep in touch with Mark Gillespie and the latest news from WhiskyCast.
Let's check the calendar now and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. The Whiskey Exchange in London has its Christmas barrel top tastings Thursday night at its Covent Garden and London Bridge shops. The Taiwan American Whiskey and Bourbon Festival is coming up this weekend, December 5th through the 7th in Taipei, Taiwan. Maker's Mark has its annual Star Hill Farm Holiday Open House December 12th in Loretto, Kentucky. Buffalo Trace Distillery has events every night from December 4th through the 31st in Frankfort, Kentucky. Woodford Reserve Distillery in Versailles, Kentucky has holiday brunches December 7th and the 14th. And West Fork Whiskey Company in Westfield, Indiana has a Breakfast with Santa event coming up on December 14th. Finally, the Fraser History Museum has a night with the Russells of Wild Turkey on the 18th in Louisville, Kentucky. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. Japanese whiskey began with Shinjiro Tori's vision to reflect the true nature and spirit of Japan. The House of Suntory was founded on these principles, guided by generations of craftsmanship that have transformed time, nature, and precision into something greater than the sum of its parts. Pure waters from the mountains of Hakushu, Mizunara oak shaped by decades of patience, a blending philosophy rooted in harmony. These aren't just techniques, they're a way of thinking, a quiet pursuit of balance and depth. From the layered complexity of Yamazaki to the crisp vibrancy of Hakushu and the elegant artistry of Hibiki, every whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from and the hands that shape it. House of Suntory. This is Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey. Most whiskey books have details on distilleries, tasting notes, and things like that. Mitch Bechard's first whiskey book has none of that. Not Another Effin' Whiskey book is a rollicking tale of life on the road as a brand ambassador, first for Diageo and then for Glenfiddich. Mitch lives in Speyside now, where the drams are great and the internet service not quite as great. We talked the other day on an occasionally scratchy Zoom call. So welcome back to WhiskyCast, Mitch. It's been a long time since we've had you on the show.
Way too long, Mark. Thank you so much for having me here.
So why did you write this book now?
Yeah, well, so as you know, Mark, I was an ambassador for a long, long time. And I moved back to Scotland. And when I moved back here, my whole focus really shifted. I started up my own company, doing whiskey tastings, whiskey experiences for people. And throughout that time, I tell all these mad stories that I had as an ambassador. And this recurring theme seemed to happen. And people kept saying to me, you need to write a book about all these experiences that you've had. People would love to read this. And I was like, whatever. And I think it was after about the 10th person that said that to me, I was like, okay, well, maybe I should. So it was around about 2 years ago. And I remember it well because it was a cold night and, I'm up in Speyside and I'm fortunate enough to have this amazing whiskey snug, which you need to come up to the next time you're up in Scotland.
Yeah.
So I've surrounded myself with whiskies there. I've got the wood burner on and I open up my laptop and I just start writing the first chapter. I start writing the introduction and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, that was cool. So I wrote one chapter and I wrote the contents page. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, how do I want it to sound? How do I want it to be? And I took a lot of inspiration. I don't know if you've ever read the book Kitchen Confidential by the late great Anthony Bourdain, absolutely amazing guy. And I loved that book. And I thought I would like to do the same thing, but not from obviously a chef point of view, from a whiskey ambassador point of view. So write a really kind of honest look at what it is to be a whiskey ambassador, be on the road. It's a very glamorous job, but it's also a very hardcore job. That was essentially it, Mark. Long story short there. Long answer to your short question. But that's how it came around. And it was 2 years in the making. So I very much got in the mood to write this book. I never forced it. And it was always something that I was like, okay, I'll do a chapter tonight. And then, it's ready and it's out in the wild now.
And why did you title it what you did?
Yeah, so it's called Not Another Effin' Whiskey book. And, I suppose it was funny because it was like a working title. And I showed it to a few people and they're like, that's brilliant. You should just put it like that. And I think there's some amazing whiskey books out there, and I want to say that from the start. Two of my very good friends are Charlie McLean and Dave Broom, and actually I mentioned them in the book. Charlie actually was very kind enough to give me a little quote on the front of it. But yeah, I suppose it's because it's more, it's nothing to do with your typical whiskey book, right? It's stories about being on the road. And I don't go into the minutiae of how to make whiskey or, what distilleries are what. And there's so many other books out there. So yeah, that's the way the title came around, really, because I just thought it'd be a lot of fun. And the book, I think, is a lot of fun for people, sit down and read it. They really enjoy it. And a lot of people have read it in one sitting, and they chuckle through it and they have a laugh, and that's what I wanted to do with it.
That's what I did, was read it in one sitting. I couldn't put it down.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate that.
So what is life like as a brand ambassador?
It's definitely a life, I'd say, of highs and lows. And I'd say that the highs definitely outweigh the lows, that's for sure. You see most ambassadors posting all the amazing stuff they do, whether, they're staying in 5-star hotels or eating in amazing steakhouses. And that's definitely the beautiful part of the job. There is kind of, the travel gets hard. And I always say, I mentored a lot of ambassadors, and I always said to them, just remember, this is a marathon and it's not a sprint. You have to really pace yourself. But it's an amazing job, and I still consider myself an ambassador. And I'm not an ambassador for one brand now, an ambassador for Scotch Whisky and what I do. And I still love talking whiskey every day to people up here in Speyside and taking them around. And now I get to actually show off the Scotch whisky in the street and flesh, which is great.
You tell a bunch of stories from your days as a brand ambassador, most of which I'm going to leave to the book. But I want you to tell me your favorite one from the book.
I think the one, and I still say, Mark, that this is going to be the highlight of my career. If there was ever one day, I don't think I'm ever going to beat it. And it's the story, I won't give too many things away about it, but it's when I was in Las Vegas, and we took a helicopter into the Grand Canyon. We tasted some Glenfiddich 50-year-old, and then we hung out with Calvin Harris backstage in the Wynn. And I remember Ian Miller was with me, who, I don't know if you remember Ian from back in the day, global ambassador for Glenfiddich, big character. And he said something about that day, because he was with me the entire day. And he said, unless I do a whiskey tasting on the moon, I'm never going to beat that day. It was pretty special. But yeah, I go into the stories about how that kind of came around and how that all was, which was a lot of fun.
I have here a bottle of Highland Park 12-year-old.
Uh-huh.
And I can't open it because I have to drive right after we finish this interview. But I want you to tell me about what Highland Park 12 meant to you as a whiskey drinker.
Yeah, I mean, there's a section in the book where I talk about the top whiskies that kind of changed my life, and Highland Park was in there, and Highland Park features in the chapter where I talk about the first time I ever got into whiskey. And as I think a lot of people listening might relate to, there's sometimes the first experience of whiskey can be a little bit, let's say, overwhelming, and that was definitely the case for me when I first tried whiskey. So I went off it for quite a long time, and then I basically accidentally, I suppose, drank some Highland Park straight out the bottle. And it was my eureka moment. It was like, okay, I get this now. I can enjoy this. And that was the pivotal moment in my whiskey career where I realized that I could start drinking it, and who knew that it would lead to an amazing career that I've had, and it's given me this life that I'm so grateful for. So yeah, I always look back at Highland Park and say that was the whiskey that really started it for me. And I'm in Scotland right now. I'm doing a series of book kind of readings and whiskey tastings, and Highland Park is involved in that, along with Glenfiddich and another few whiskies that feature in the book as well.
How did you make the move from Diageo to Glenfiddich?
That was a lot of fun. So that was, that was one year, 2009, 2010, when we had a really bad winter in Scotland, and it was horrendous. And my wife turned to me and said, "Can you not go somewhere hot with your job? Can you take us somewhere warm?" And I saw the position for the Glenfiddich ambassador on the West Coast, and I applied for that. And within 3 months, we'd moved out to Newport Beach, California. So that was so much fun. I mean, 8 years in the US, I did 42 states, unbelievable experiences over there. And I think, that's where we met, and we hung out quite a few times. I remember us hanging out one night in New Orleans. I should have put that in the book, right?
No, the statute of limitations has not expired on that yet.
I think that's the funny thing about the book. When I started writing certain things, I was like, I don't know if I can put this in here. Some things had to be kept out. So that's the good thing. If you do hang out with me, I do have other stories that weren't put in the book that we can talk about. And the other cool thing was, obviously anyone in the book that's mentioned, I reached out to them and said, "Hey, are you all right with this being in?" And so I had to do that, obviously.
Yeah, because what happens on the road stays on the road.
Yeah. I like to think there's quite a few things that went on the road that didn't go into the book, though.
So there's enough for a sequel.
A sequel, yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed writing the book, and if anyone listening is thinking about writing a book, I think now is the best time to do it. It's there's so many platforms where you can publish yourself, and I just, by the end of it, just getting that first copy and seeing it in print, I was like, oh, that's such a cool thing. So I am thinking about writing another one. I don't know whether it's going to be like a part two to this. It might be something a little bit different. Maybe moving into some kind of whiskey novel or something like that. But yeah, who knows?
One of the things you write about in the book is the way it's changed from being what you referred to as a sausage fest at most whiskey tastings to more women being involved. And that's really made it a lot better, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think when I wrote the book, I realized that I didn't want to just write about all my stories, and I wanted to have some relevance to the whiskey industry, an industry that we both love, and so does everyone listening. And for me, that's when it changed, and I put in these serious chapters in there. So like you mentioned, there is the chapter about women in whiskey. There's chapters about sustainability and all these aspects of it that I wanted to really bring out the positivity within the industry right now. And as you say, absolutely, women in whiskey is so refreshing. I mean, I think now whenever I do a tasting or whenever I'm hosting a group, on average, I would say it's around about 35 to 50% women mostly now. There are definitely exceptions to that, but it's so refreshing to see, not just within the audience, but also within the industry. I heard a statistic the other day, Mark, and I need to look into this, but someone said to me that there's more master blenders that are women now in Scotland than men, which I think that sounds about right. I mean,
wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it's something that I'm passionate about. I've the Our Whiskey Foundation's mentioned in the book as well. I've been a mentor on that for the last 5 years. So yeah, I want to see the whiskey industry become definitely more inclusive, which I think it has done. And you've probably seen that over your time as well.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot in terms of not only brand ambassadors and master blenders, but whiskey drinkers.
Yeah.
Where do you take whiskey from here in terms of a worldwide drink? Because you also talk about the growth of worldwide whiskeys in there. Is there a point at which Scotch whiskey may lose its status as the number one whiskey?
I don't think so. I think we've always we've got the advantage of always having that history and heritage behind us, and I think that's the new world whiskies, as I talk about in the book, they've got a lot of catching up to do with regards to that. And my theory on this, and I don't know if it's right or not, but I love the fact that now people in their own country can drink their own whiskey from their own country. And one of the things I always say is that all roads will lead back to the old world whiskies that we have now, as in Ireland, Scotland, the US, Canada. So I think people it will be advantageous, I should say, to have these world whiskies, because it will lead back to the original whiskies that started it all. And I hope that interest with people will stem back to Scotland. But I think, on the other hand, there is this aspect of, the handcuffs almost we have with the SWA here, and what we can do versus everyone around the world that has a little bit more freedom to experiment a bit more. So I think we need to be mindful of that. But again, we do need to hold on to the traditions that we have within Scotch whisky here.
Let's talk about your podcast, Not Another Whiskey Podcast. For those who have not heard it, tell us about it.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, that was a lockdown project, and I'd like to say that you were very much an inspiration for. I've listened to WhiskyCast ever since my Diageo days. I think the first time I spoke to you was popping your little email saying, like, I'm going around Scotland, and I always listen to your podcast. So, 2020 lockdown, that last lifetime that we can barely remember, I set up a podcast with my good friend Daryl Haldane, who now works for Suntory, and we're now in our 6th season. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's the same sort of vibe as the book. We don't take ourselves seriously. We always have a laugh. We kind of, as we say in Scotland, take the mickey out of each other a lot on the podcast, and we have some good guests on as well. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun doing that.
And talk about Copper Cairn for a minute, your business, because we have listeners who are always looking for tours of Scotland and tasting.
Yeah. So Copper Cairn was my baby. Again, set it up in lockdown. Anyone listening, don't ever set up your own business in the middle of a global pandemic that involves tourism. So the idea was that I wanted to create bespoke experiences, whiskey experiences for people. Being 20 years in the industry, I knew I had the connections. I knew I could do that. So we do now full event planning when it comes to anyone coming over from Scotland, and we can do groups from 2 right the way up to 20. Multi-day trips, single-day trips, you name it, we do it. And the whole idea is that we can organize everything from, as you like to say in the US, from soup to nuts. And we have our own transportation. We organize all that. We organize distillery visits. We organize whiskey dinners, you name it. With regards to whiskey, we can do it within Copper Cairn.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
It is. It is indeed, man. And we need to hang out next time you're coming over.
Next time I get over, we will hang out.
Look forward to it.
Mitch Bechard is the author of Not Another Effin' Whiskey book. It's available through Amazon now, and we've posted a link in the show notes for this episode at whiskycast.com. That's WhiskyCast In-Depth, brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whiskey making process from start to finish. We do things slowly, and we do them right. We start with a smooth, single-grain Irish whiskey. We age it in flame-charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice and signature smoothness. This is a whiskey at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
Let's begin the What I'm Tasting This Week department with the latest release from Wild Turkey, an 8-year-old bourbon bottled at Jimmy Russell's preferred 101 proof or 50.5% ABV. The nose is classic Wild Turkey with touches of caramel, apple pie, honey, and vanilla. The taste has a nice balance of caramel candy and black peppercorns, complemented by apples, nutmeg, allspice, and vanilla. The finish is long and spicy. I'm scoring the Wild Turkey 8-year-old bourbon a 94. I mentioned Willett's new Family Estate small batch 4-year-old bourbon in the news a couple of weeks ago and received a sample bottle the other day. This one is bottled at 62.5% ABV, and the nose has touches of caramel, subtle spices, charred oak, honey, and vanilla. The taste is spicy with black pepper, cinnamon, clove, charred oak, and honey notes, while the finish is long and spicy with a honeyed sweetness. I'm scoring the Willett Family Estate Small Batch 4-year-old Bourbon a 94. And finally, Glen Grant has kicked off a new series of experimental single malts. Exploration No. 1 is finished in Jamaican rum casks and bottled at 48% ABV. The nose has notes of honey, molasses, dried flowers, apricots, and cooked bananas. The taste is fruity with peaches, apricots, banana, coconut, and honey, while the finish is long and fruity with a hint of spice. I'm scoring Glen Grant's Exploration No. 1 a 92. I'll be adding these whiskeys to our searchable list of 3,900 different whiskeys from all over the world. Check it out this week at whiskycast.com.
Hey again, it's Gabriel from Jewers. Every holiday has that moment when the food's done and the talking, laughing, and sipping begins. That's where the perfect gift shows up. Jewers 12-year-old. Finished in first fill, unrinsed bourbon casks, and crafted by 6-time Master Blender of the Year, Stephanie McLeod. It's the highest rated 12-year blended scotch out there. A gift that speaks for itself. Because holidays aren't about the gifts we keep, they're about the ones we share. Please enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025, Jewers is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch Whisky, 40% alcohol by volume.
Let's open up the inbox and see what people are talking about this week in the WhiskyCast community app. Dan posted a birthday greeting for the folks at Scotland's Kingsbarns Distillery. Today is the distillery's 11th anniversary, and we join Dan in wishing them a happy anniversary. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that Canada's Black Fox Distillery won the International Wine and Spirits Competition trophy for Worldwide Whiskey Producer of the Year. Canuck Sloth had this comment: "Cool to see a small Saskatchewan whiskey maker win top honors. I had the chance to sample their product a few weeks back, and it is excellent. As an FYI, it is not an exaggeration regarding the weather. We will get between 7 and 14 days a year that dips below 40 below and around the same in the sun at 40 above. That's all Celsius, of course, and it's one hell of a temperature swing. Makes for good whiskey, though." After I posted the news this week about Bruichladdich taking its black art to travel retail, we had several comments in the app. Matt commented, "Looks like I'm heading to Singapore." The Tracer Bullet added this comment: "Well, it's a pricey one to begin with, but now exclusive? Not a good move, in my opinion." And our good friend Juan Cruz chimed in, "Where is the thumbs down feature for this app?" If you have something to say, we'd love to hear from you. Download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store and join the conversation. You can also find us on social media. Look for WhiskyCast on X, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. Heaven Hill is about to celebrate a milestone. December 13th marks 90 years since the 5 Shapiro brothers, David, Ed, Gary, George, and Mose, and Joseph Beam started distilling whiskey at the old Heaven Hill Springs Distillery in Bardstown, Kentucky. The Shapiros later bought out Joseph Beam's ownership stake and that of other investors, but Beam remained the head distiller and started a long line of Beams at Heaven Hill, which ended when Craig Beam stepped down a few years ago. Ed's son Max joined the family business in 1971 and is today executive chairman of Heaven Hill. His daughter Kate and her husband Alan Latz are the co-presidents. In 2002, the 5 Shapiro brothers were inducted into the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame, followed by Max Shapiro in 2018. And earlier this year, Heaven Hill opened its new Heaven Hill Springs Distillery in Bardstown, replacing the original distillery that was destroyed in a 1996 fire. Congratulations to the entire Heaven Hill family on 90 years of whiskey history. If there is something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, Just get in touch with us. That's all for this episode of WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, the whiskey photo of the week, and, of course, a complete archive of past episodes going all the way back to 2005. Get in touch with us, download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store, or find us on social media. We're on Blue Sky, X, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Crafted with time, shaped by nature, perfected by generations. From Yamazaki to Hibiki to Hakushu, every drop of House of Suntory whiskey is a reflection of where it comes from. House of Suntory, this is Japanese whiskey.
Enjoy responsibly. Suntory Whiskey Single Malt and Blended Japanese Whiskey. 43% alcohol by volume. Copyright 2025 Suntory Global Spirits Import Company, Chicago, Illinois.
Food's gone, stories are flying, and everyone's laughing a little too loud. That's when Dewar's 12-year-old feels right at home. Enjoy the holidays from your friends at Dewar's.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2025, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.